We don't claim to be experts on serial killers, but we do certainly have our opinions on the subject. We remain victim-focused with this podcast, but we felt compelled to have this discussion based off of recent events occurring in New England. So, what is your opinion? Do you think serial killers are born or created?
Welcome to Invisible Tears. I'm Jane, host of Invisible Tears. I'm here with my co-host Amanda and Drew. Hi. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good.
Good.
Fighting a little cold, but I'm getting there. So first, I do want to very much make this clear. We are a victim-focused platform. Always have been and always will be. But as a survivor of a serial killer, sometimes I know for me, it's always been a curiosity on how a serial killer's mind works and what makes them tick, what makes them want to kill. And with everything going on down in Massachusetts and Connecticut right now with all the bodies and the rumors flying about possible serial killer down there, I decided to post on our Facebook page. I said simply, what drives serial killers to kill? And we got quite a few responses. A lot of people really chimed in with their opinions. So some of these are pretty much what most of them were saying is they kill for the power and control. Some of them have chemical imbalance, mental illness, living out of fantasy, lack of nurturing relationships, inherited evil, childhood trauma, lack of self-control, ego, power, and even some have no history of trauma. Environmental factors, early home life, and personality disorders. It was almost like all over the place. So I went on and did a little bit of Googling, and I found quite a few interesting statistics. Like 50% of serial killers have experienced psychological abuse. 36% have experienced physical abuse. And only 26% have experienced sexual abuse. And this blew my mind. There have been 3,616 documented serial killers in the U.S. up until 2020.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a big figure.
And I was like, no way. And then I went to other websites, and there are 3,616 documented serial killers in the United States.
Wow.
All the way up to 2020. That just blows my mind. Like, wow.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I know we had a short conversation about this, Drew, one time about I know you did a little bit of research or watched a documentary how they found no what was it? No evidence in the brain that there was, it had anything to do with the brain as far as being a serial killer.
Yes, I believe it. They've been trying to identify if there is some sort of chemical imbalance, some sort of wires that are crossed in the brain when it comes to psychopathy, sociopaths, along those lines. And as far as I know, as of latest research that I had done, can't remember how long it's been, that they have not been able to actually identify that marker that would actually pinpoint to, oh, this person is going to grow up to have psychopathic tendencies, or a sociopath, narcissist. Yeah, so I think throughout the research, and they're continuing their research, they haven't been able to identify what actually does make that person that type of person. Now, with that being said, too, when you do bring up the statistics of, out of serial killers, 50%, experienced trauma, 36% physical abuse. It's surprisingly low, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would have actually expected those to be a little bit higher, especially because when you look at those figures, it adds up to over 100. So that there's definitely some overlap with those figures, such as, one serial killer could have been physically, mentally, and sexually abused. So he would be in all three of those categories,
Right.
sort of skewing those stats a little bit. But then when you do look at the regular population and how many of the world's population fit under one of those three criteria, and then do not develop into being a serial killer or being a murderer or abuser.
Exactly. That was my thought too. It's like a lot of people on the Facebook page when I posted this post was, abuse, child abuse, or any kind of physical abuse or anything like that. And it's like, well, there's a lot of people that have been abused or experienced trauma in their life, but don't go out and start becoming a serial killer.
Right.
So I don't know. I did, some more digging, and page after page after page, I just find that all the studies that have been done and all the people that have really investigated all this, they can't really find an absolute reason why someone becomes a serial killer.
No, because I believe ideally what they would like to do is exactly find that marker within the brain that causes the switch to be flipped,
Yeah.
and make them be a killer. Because ideally, I think what they would like to do is once they identify this markers in the brain, they can actually go into the natal development and see if that is happening. And if so, can we uncross those wires before development happens?
Right.
I believe that's the end game.
Right. Can we develop some sort of, I guess you could say, fix before the trigger sort of flips?
Now, whether
Yeah.
it's actually they're ever going to be able to identify that, I don't think so. And if they do, is it going to be a fix for everything? What are the long-term ramifications of implementing something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is also one of those, if you do look at, once again, this is like an older stat back when first getting into corporate finance and stuff, doing research, you would always hear the traits between a CEO and a serial killer are so close because they all have the same psychopathic tendencies. It's just a matter of what do you use that ego and that power for.
Mm-hmm.
Some use it
Yeah.
to go on killing sprees, others use it to run Fortune 500 companies where the bottom line is the most important.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised. I remember hearing about that too. You really start bringing into the picture the question about, free will as well. Like you were saying, if they actually end up finding some sort of indicator or some sort of marker, okay, well, that would be fantastic. So we have some sort of indicator early on, but does everyone with that indicator or that marker end up making those choices?
Yeah.
Exactly like you guys were explaining, so many would assume that they had to have gone through trauma. It had to be something environmental. There had to be something that just sort of, sure, there may have been stressors, but when you get down to it, not everybody who's experienced trauma becomes a serial killer. Not everybody,
Yeah.
there's free will, there's choices. And now, as I speak about free will, some murderers may, not agree with that statement and be like, I didn't have a choice. I had to,
Yeah. But I also did some more digging about that 3,600 serial killers documented in the US up
Mhm.
until 2020. And I was also reading in quite a few places that they were saying there's not as many serial killers today as there were in like the 1980s and the 90s. And they were um, they were contributing that to one thing I know about serial killers is their biggest fear is to be caught. They do not want to be caught. And nowadays, it's more likely they'll be caught today compared to in the 80s and the 90s because of the resources that law enforcement has now, DNA, the cameras. Everybody's got a camera now. Um, so they're more likely to be caught today versus back in the 80s and the 90s, which was quite interesting too. But in a way, I kind of disagree with that because I don't think you really know how many serial killers are running around in the United States unless they're caught. I mean, you really
Right.
don't know.
Yeah.
Jane, I got a question. During your research, did you see any figures that identified the number of missing people, say, today throughout the United States versus the number of missing people in the 1980s?
Way more today than there was in the 1980s and 90s.
But that's
Way
interesting
more.
because with all these cameras everywhere, social media, and just everybody's lives being online and everybody knowing where everybody is, how is it that there's more missing people identified now than in the 1980s?
That's a really good
So once
point.
again, if the argument is going to be, well, there's not as many killers because there's just so many more eyes out there, well, then why isn't that argument the same way when why is there so many missing people out there?
Yep.
Their lives must be recorded absolutely everywhere. There's traffic cam footage everywhere,
Yep.
according to
Social
authorities.
media, everything, phones, phone trackers, everything. Yeah.
I think you just went ahead and sort of gave a little bit more basis to like Jane's point with that too, right? You're like, oh, well,
If you're going to use the argument for one topic and the argument stands true for the other one, then they should go hand in hand.
Sure.
You can't have it two different ways, in my opinion. It's the consistency with the messaging.
So I have to question because of social media and the way everything just gets spewed out there and spreads so quickly. Do they not want us to believe there's that many serial killers out there
Well,
because
look.
they don't want fear spread?
Well, let's look at the messaging, especially in southern New England, from the district attorneys, the police chiefs, and everybody in the towns that the bodies are being found. The message is online is just creating fear and panic. There's pandemonium among us. Everybody's running around with their heads cut off, and there's all you're going to do is create all this fear. Jane, let me ask you, since you've actually had this, monster come into your life, you of all people should be so scared, hiding underneath a rug. Do you still park in the same parking spot at Gamarlo's parking lot?
I do.
So where is the fear that is created by just knowing that there is something out there?
Exactly.
So with the message being all of this talking about possibilities of something happening, and we're not even saying that there is a serial killer. All we're saying is there's something weird going on in southern New England right now.
It's
But more
suspicious.
importantly,
Yeah.
the male bodies in Boston and on the Merrimack River, we actually find more intriguing than these bodies currently being found in southern New England. And really nothing's being done about it.
Yep.
But all the messaging is if you talk about it, you're just going to create fear.
Mhm.
But we also need you to talk about it because we need you to come forward with information. So once again, the messaging can't have it both ways, in my
It's-
opinion.
It's
And
fascinating.
really, where is the panic being created about of people just telling people to be vigilant, keep your eyes open?
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
not
just one of
spreading
those.
fear.
It's a cop out, in my opinion, and it's very condescending. In my
I think it's because the more people talk about it, the more they have to do their job.
and
And
people don't like being called out on being shitty at their job.
exactly. Exactly. Yep.
which is amazing. In the private world, you're allowed to get called out for doing shitty at your job all the fucking time. But if you're a public servant worker, which cops are, you cannot call them out on being bad at their job. They know so much better than absolutely everybody else.
Yeah, they always claim they know what's going on. They just can't share the info. It's I get so frustrated with that.
So yeah, when the police talk about discussions online, it's just fear mongering, creating fear. Aren't they also creating fear by just sweeping absolutely everything underneath the rug? How many times, Amanda, how many times in your research have you seen within early in the investigations when bodies are connected, there's nothing to see here. They're not connected. You don't have to worry. 4 years down the road, after the fourth body is found, okay, maybe we might have something going on here. Let's look at the Connecticut Valley serial killer in particular. First murder was in 1977. Task force wasn't put together until 1986. So for 9 years, and how many bodies were there in that time period?
I think there was 5.
5. So up until the 5th body was found, which really was only because the 2 bodies were found within 500 yards of one another, 300 yards of one another.
No, you were correct. 500 yards. There were 3 bodies that were found within a week and a half.
Exactly.
And then the task force was formed.
So then it was, oh shit, we might actually have something here. There actually might be a serial killer. But up until that point, nothing to see here. It's okay. You guys are just getting worked up. There's nothing to see here. Until, oh shit, now we actually need everybody's help to solve this because this person is not stopping and we're up to 5 bodies, and then there turns out to be another 3 attacks after that. How do police want it? Do they want everybody to keep their mouths shut and not really talk about it until they can do their jobs and solve these cases? Which, let's look at the 8 cases in the Connecticut Valley serial killing. They've done a great job of solving those. Or do they actually want people to keep on talking about it to try to find out as much information as possible? Now, we know the only way that stuff gets done is by keeping the names of the victims out there. But apparently, it's blasphemous if you do.
Some of them, they haven't even identified the remains down in Connecticut. But it was, Nancy Grace brought up 2 really good points when I was on her show the other night. One, they did the same exact thing out in Portland, Oregon, where there was a serial killer running around. They claimed, they were adamant there was not a serial killer running around. Come to find out, they had to come forward when they arrested the serial killer and admit there was a serial killer in Oregon. But another thing that's kind of interesting too is that Nancy Grace brought up, there is no tip line down in Connecticut for people to call in tips, Connecticut or Massachusetts or Rhode Island. And she's like, there's no tip line. So they just dug out a Springfield number for the Springfield Police Department to post on her show. And she was like, Jane, is this true? There's no tip line? There is no tip line. Why is there no tip line down in Connecticut and Massachusetts? They do not want the public's help. Or if they have a tip line, they have to admit that there's a killer running around and they want information on him. Which is it? I don't know. I just thought it was kind of weird.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. And now back to our episode.
So everything I read, there's all kinds of different things on what makes a serial killer tick. And nobody really knows. They try to interview these serial killers. They all have different stories. They all have different messages. They just, there's no conclusion on really why a serial killer kills. So I also read Minds to the Madness. And their conclusion was, despite the current interest in studying serial killers, serial killings have drastically decreased in the last couple of decades. This is them writing this. As the face of sensationalized crime continues to change, the serial killers of the 20th century continue to capture the attention of millions. Social scientists continue to be right behind it all, collecting data, trying to figure out why these crimes occur and why we love to watch. I mean, true crime is huge right now. Um, Again, we are very much victim focused. And I think the more podcasters that we meet and have been associated with, we are finding that more podcasters are definitely victim focused too.
Now, where
So
did that last quote come from?
putting methods to the madness. It was something I found online. They've done some studies and
Now, is that pointing the fascination with serial killers and with true crime solely on individuals, civilians, or is it just the world in general, media included, in your
I
opinion?
I think everybody's interested in um, different aspects of how a serial killer ticks.
So no, when
And
we look at all the media currently talking about the southern New England stuff, when you read all the articles, it really is just these online sleuths which are just creating all this stuff out of thin air. Yet the media is so quick to pick up on it and
yeah,
talk about it and write about it with only picking and choosing certain aspects according to how they want the message of that particular article to come across.
yeah, the narrative.
The narrative, exactly.
I think it's a great platform. People have theories. People have brought up some really good questions about what has been going on down in Connecticut. Um, you know, like for instance, they've tried to come up with really good theories with, well, these two deaths may be connected or these two deaths may be connected, but they're not all connected. And obviously we know in the past week they've made a few arrests on some of the cases. But I think it's important to keep talking about it. Whether it's misinformation, not misinformation. It's all on social media. And I think it's really important to keep talking about it because, like, we have said in the past, you stop talking about it, you stop posting on Facebook, then people forget that they're happening and they never get solved. This is putting them talking about their theories or their opinions or whatever, that is putting pressure on law enforcement to get these cases solved, to do the right thing.
Yeah, and I don't think that I think pretty commonly, especially if we see a headline of them throwing a ton of shade specifically at this group or the people involved with this group, they're definitely playing into a certain narrative and a certain message that they have in their article, right? Like you said, Drew, they're cherry picking certain aspects of it, but not a single person is that is in the midst of writing that article is actually going back to the origination of why that group actually originated. It was originated originally because there were lots of men that were disappearing in Boston,
Yeah.
in rivers. And so this group has existed for an extremely long time.
2019, I believe.
Yeah. Yep. So going on 6 years now. I do not think that the majority of the people in this group truly think this is one singular serial killer. I really don't. I think a lot of the people within this group are sort of just trying to keep all this information current, making sure that people are aware, sort of for like safety reasons and things like that. May some of them be connected? Sure. But nobody's saying definitively that they have, that they truly think that is the case. They have like proof or anything like that. It's really not the purpose of the group. The purpose of the group is to really just try and keep all the information in one place, make sure everybody understands what's going on. I mean, let's be real, serial killer or not, there's freaking bodies popping up. all over the place. Like there's people are dead.
Yep.
It's not a is it a common occurrence to consistently find a dead body every week in the same, 50-mile radius?
And then you gotta look at all the missing. There's
Yeah.
so many missing people
Mhm.
just since last summer,
Mhm.
just in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So I have no doubt, unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but I don't have any doubt in my mind over the summer they're gonna start finding those ones that went missing last summer. I really do. I think they're gonna start finding them, unfortunately. But we have to keep talking about it so law enforcement doesn't stop doing their jobs.
Yeah.
This puts pressure on them.
And it's mainly because the cases are so recent and so fresh and so new. It's put the pressure on while everything is fresh in people's minds, while the
Mhm.
evidence is fresh.
Yeah.
As we know, in New Hampshire in particular, if it's not solved very quickly, it takes forever to be solved if it gets solved at all. And we know, hell, let's look at the Connecticut Valley case. Why is there such a difficult time right now to try to progress the case? It's because it's been so long. And
Mhm.
how long did they go before they were really trying to reach out to get the general's public's help? It happened around 86 and 88, but when did that die off? When did the media and the cops stop reaching out to the
Oh,
general
it
public?
died off very shortly after we did Unsolved Mysteries, like
Exactly.
92, 93.
That's 90 or
Yeah.
91, I think, when that episode came out, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I
So
believe it was 91. Yeah. Based off of some of the articles that I've researched, especially specific to Jane's, the conversations and everything died, at least publicly in the media, it died off probably within a week and a half.
Yeah.
And that was after there were publications putting out there that you were most likely linked to other women. So, and then obviously it kind of grew in traction again once Unsolved Mysteries aired, and they received a ton of tips and information, but then traction very quickly died off again. Yeah, so I mean, I guess to just summarize, what we're saying here, everybody can sort of have their own sort of opinion and belief in regards to what we think really, sort of drives a serial killer or even a murderer. But science hasn't been able to figure it out. There are statistics that are published where it's like, okay, well, if this is true, then what happens to the other half of the population as well. So it's really unknown. I honestly, in my personal opinion, I honestly do not know. And I think one of the reasons why I am a bit intrigued in, especially the science behind trying to figure that out, is because my brain doesn't work like that. And I kind of want to understand how a brain could work like that.
That's a really good point. I guess unless you are a serial killer, you will never understand why you kill,
Right.
which
and I do wonder if that's what a lot of people's fascination is with true crime. If it's
Mhm.
not, I don't think it's really necessarily with the murders or the acts themselves, but it's the mindset leading up to it and then afterwards,
mhm,
trying to comprehend how somebody could live their lives before and after an event like that.
Mhm.
To me
yeah,
personally, that is the fascinating part. That is the how do you compartmentalize? How do you just go about your day? Because me personally, I cannot comprehend, with that going on in the mind. So
yeah.
Mhm.
that's really where, at least from my perspective, that's where my fascination is going. How the hell do these people get to that point and then continue living their lives as if nothing happened?
Yeah. I mean, so many live double lives, right?
Yeah. You know, I've often asked, some of the questions. I've been asked before if you could sit in front of the person that did this to me, would you ask him questions? And I absolutely would ask him questions. I would love to have that day because it's not, yeah, one of my questions would be, why'd you do this to me? But the other questions would be, did you go home and eat supper? Did you go home and kiss your wife? Did you go home and tuck your kids to bed? What did you do when you got home after brutally stabbing me 27 times? That was something I've always wondered about and really always wanting questions to, is what did you do after? What went through your mind after? What did you do the next day? Did you look at the news? Did you look at the papers? Were you following, um, you know, what law enforcement was doing? Or did you just go to work and live a normal life? Those are questions that I often have. And unfortunately, I probably won't ever have the answers, but yeah, a lot of people think that my first question is going to be, why did you do this? And it's like, no, it's what did you do after?
Hmm.
Did you ever think about me, 10 years later or 20 years later? Did you ever think about me until I happened to come in the news and started being a real public figure? Did you ever think about me over the years? Did you drive by my house? You know, it's questions like that I would love to have answers to, because I am very curious what he did after, you know,
That's a
hours,
fantastic point.
days, months, years after, you know.
Yeah, now I'm curious too.
Again, we are still very victim focused. Um, and we just wanted to see what people thought about serial killers. So thank you for joining us on Invisible Tears. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Amanda. Until next time.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of Invisible Tears. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast to hear all future episodes. Click into our link tree too in the episode description to find and follow us on all our social medias. And it also links to our website, invisible-tears.com, where you can keep current on any events that may be coming up, read more about Jane and the team, and read more about all the Connecticut River Valley unsolved cases. Evil may exist in this world, but we will not let it win. See you next episode.